Back again with another review. Thanks for checking out the channel. My name is Josh, and we are, of course, talking about, you'd know this if you clicked a little thumbnail with Sandman, Episode 3. So if you're up to speed with Sandman, hopefully you are by the time if you're watching this, that you've probably watched the episode, and I'm going to talk as if you have watched the episode. So I'm going to just walk through it kind of briefly on what the episode was like, and then what I thought about it, and where I think it may be going. So definitely, this one, again, it kind of picked up a good bit of stuff, whether it be the lore, the intensity, the violence, the foul mouth, which I really appreciated. That was pretty fantastic and fun. But it was definitely very interesting. A couple things that I had to get in order. Firstly, last review, I thought I had heard a couple of the names and I got some of the characters wrong. So this was really good for me to help kind of figure out who is who. So we had Johanna Constantine, who was actually, that's not the mistress of the one that imprisoned Morpheus. It's actually, that's the person who got the actual bag of sand from Ethel. Ethel was her name, I believe, was the mistress that stole all the stuff from the guy that imprisoned him. I should really remember his name. Anyway, so I was able to get some of them straight and kind of figure out the storyline. So we had Morpheus was there looking for, obviously, his tools, and he's looking for his sand, his bag of sand or pouch of sand, whatever you want to call it. And he was told by the Fates to go check out Constantine, so that's where he goes. You get some good little dialogue between them, and the fact that she doesn't know who he is, or she knows of him, but not really, sort of a deal. And then she's on her way at the moment to actually figure out, you're figuring out what she's on her way to, and I'm sure it does have some relation to actual Constantine, like John Constantine, maybe from the DCU, or maybe that's just the name. There's some more lore to it that I'm unaware of. Please let me know if there is a connection, if there's no connection, if the name just has maybe it crosses multiple storylines. I don't really know. But the other Constantine did a lot of very similar things to this Constantine, including exorcism. So she was being called to the church to perform an exorcism, and it just happened to be that it was with one of the royal family, and there was some kind of cool banter that went back and forth there. And all be all, what really happened that was super cool was there was a little bit of an exorcism that was kind of disguised in the midst of the ceremony, which was kind of cool, and it was a little mystery misdirect there about who the actual demon was. But when the demon is actually getting exorcised, or at least exposed from its host, this show does it in a very unique way that I'm not sure I've seen. I mean, I've seen things like it, but nothing exactly like this in the horror shows for sure, let alone movies. But the demon literally comes out the guy's mouth and rips him in half. It's just fantastic, and you're left with this big, bloody, hulking demon that was really cool looking. Like, I really dug the look of the demon. At first, I was just like, oh, that dude's it's a big guy with dreads. But then you start to look at him a little more, and you're like, oh my god, like his features, how the effects team did it, looked really cool to me, and it just kind of reminded me of maybe these demons from a lot of different anime, or maybe even video games, things like that. Played Doom a good bit. But he was super cool. It actually turned out that, so that was really, really cool, but also really violent. You're just like, well, that guy's screwed. He was a nice football player, I guess, but it also kind of sounded like, he wasn't, I don't know if that marriage was on the strongest of feet, so maybe it's a good thing in the long run. Princess is probably going to have some therapy to go to for that for a while, but anyway, so we're getting away from that one. So you see the demon, Constantine was there present, so he was able to talk to the demon briefly. As he said, he knew who the demon was impressed. So it was finally when Constantine actually realized who Morpheus is, or that Morpheus is who he says he was, and how big of a deal he is. Although I'll kind of talk about it in a minute. I'm not sure, it never really felt like she did know or fully understand who Morpheus, the Endless Dreamer, or Dreaming Endless, whatever his name is. So, I mean, there was a lot of dialogue that was kind of interesting. Some of it worked for me, some of it didn't. But end all be all, at the beginning, her character was awesome. I mean, she was, doing what she needed to, exorcising demons. Ended up sending that one back to hell because Constantine was actually aware and was going to find out the name of the demon that actually had his helmet, I believe, was what he needs to get. His next tool to get, and Constantine just banished him back to hell before that could happen. So that was a little, I mean, you could have just saved it a little bit, waited 5 minutes. I mean, but anyway, So we got the demon that's been exorcised, and then Morpheus is basically telling Constantine that, she needs to help him, and she's like, oh yeah, I'll do it on my own, and he's like, yeah, and then we got introduced to a Raven. So we have a new Raven, which is Matthew, which they talk a little bit more about in the end here, but we do find out a good deal about the Ravens, not at this point in the story, but it's kind of cool. Morpheus isn't really having it, but at the same time, Constantine's gone, so now he has to invade the dream world as she's probably sleeping to find out where she is, and he does find her in the midst of a nightmare slash memory. So he finds her, tells her what's up, and then they're going to go find his bag. And at this point, she's kind of on board with it, and it turns out that they have to go visit an ex of hers. So it was a little interesting that she just turned and changed her mind pretty quickly, but at the same time, I guess if you do have somebody that's in your dreams and you realize maybe actually is the dream god, I guess that's what he is, you might just want to help him out a little bit. The whole story about the ex actually having the thing, or the sand, the bag of sand, but also like leaving things there from her, and like she had never, the story of like how exactly they broke up was kind of really shitty, and it was really interesting. It kind of just painted a picture of Constantine, and there was more to that as well. Like once they get to the ex's house, she goes upstairs, Constantine's gonna be downstairs. You think it's gonna be this normal setup where, okay, well, we're gonna go up here, and either A, kind of what they had alluded to, that there may be somebody else that she was expecting to be arriving, so Constantine might be walking into something not good. Turns out, goes upstairs, and it's maybe Constantine's best case scenario. She opens the door, oh, how have you been? No, blah, 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 you're such a jerk, and then they just start making out. And then it kind of turns into a little bit of a nightmare, because she starts to ask about, or tell her who she called. She talked to all of her previous exes, and they kind of say the same thing, or the worst possible things that she thinks about herself. And you start to realize that it's definitely a dream or a nightmare at that point of sorts. That's when Constantine does come in after some prodding by Matthew, his new Raven, that humans need to definitely, they're in it for themselves, and they're not really just going to help you for the sake of it, because that's how he was as a human, which again we'll get to in a minute. But you kind of realize how the Ravens come about, maybe, or at least a little hint into that. And anyway, you find out that basically what it seems like is the ex-girlfriend who became the ex-girlfriend because Constantine just never returned, called, or just basically disappeared completely. And they just find her in bed, laying there, sleeping, or kind of half awake, I guess, at this point, but with the bag, the Sandman's bag. And she's apparently been in more or less a perpetual dream state, I'm guessing, or like having the best dream ever, or just feeling completely and utterly at ease. But basically, she's been that way since Constantine left and never came back. So the fact that she never called to check on her to, just see how she was, or do any of these things that a normal person would have done, didn't do any of that. Basically, it was a lot like almost the scene in Seven, where you walk in and it's somebody that's just been like starved to death, because she's just laid there and been in this dream. And I'm not sure if she basically probably would have died long ago if the magic of the bag maybe had kept her alive. But it was interesting, it was cool, it was disturbing. My biggest qualm with this one was kind of more how immediately Constantine turned it on to Morpheus's fault, like this was your fault for doing this, and he was pretty quick about it, just being like, you're the one that left, or like never came back, and well, it's the blah blah blah. It's like got a little bitchy and a little complainy and a little not making sense. Granted, your ex-girlfriend that also you apparently didn't care enough about to even talk to is laying on the bed behind you dying, but so I guess you could forgive a little bit, but I mean, it's definitely Constantine's fault. But yeah, the guilt trip-ish kind of thing does work a bit on Morpheus, so he comes over, tells her to leave. She says, I guess she says goodbye, or she just says sorry. I think she apologized, something like that. Yeah, that's what it was. She apologized, and then she leaves out. And then I was in the back of my head, I was like, I don't know if she's okay. Well, finally, I wouldn't give this other guy everlasting life or bring back his dead son so that I could escape this prison that I've been in for 100 years. But I'll just do it because he just asked me. I'll bring her back. Not what happened. And it subverted my expectations in the fact that it basically, he gave her either a good memory or it was like a dream of them being together or saying goodbye, something like that, so she could pass or she could die at peace. And it was pretty cool, but it wasn't what I expected. So that's what this show has done really well. Is subverted my expectations in a couple of ways. One of those scenes like that was definitely like I thought that when they go up there and they just the ex couple there, they're just gonna see each other and fall back madly in love and then just pick it right up. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, they're either gonna be yelly or they're gonna be into it, and then it's just gonna go nice and smooth and easy. And then it's like, whoa, and it didn't, and it went a little more way dark. And again, finding out in fact that this is all, yes, technically, I guess Morpheus or Dream's fault, but it's really Constantine. Ooh, that's a tough one, but it was cool. Again, changed up some things, and I didn't expect or see exactly where it was going, so I appreciate that a good deal. After that one, basically, Dream does get his pouch back, parts ways with Constantine more or less, kind of on as positive as they could, and he definitely, I guess, as good as he could, was kind of as much as he can, trying to be nice and just saying that, she's not as bad as the guy that held him captive for all those years. Which, again, I think that's somewhere where they're going to be going with the characters, trying to get him some exposure to, I guess, humanity and maybe emotions, and maybe he'll develop that way. Because I could definitely see him, again, right now, he kind of appears to be a rather stiff or rather bored character because he's not emotional. I mean, he doesn't really have a lot of social skills or anything like that. But at the same time, you're thinking about one of, like, 7 of these entities that are endless. They don't really have equals per se. They don't have to be nice, they don't need to be nice, they're just gods to my knowledge. So I can imagine them being a little more fish out of water and trying to learn, but also maybe trying to develop and realize why he does want to save humanity, if that's ends up being what the case is. But it is pretty interesting. I was watching with my girlfriend, and I haven't watched them, but she's a big Studio Ghibli fan, and she did say there were some eerie coincidences actually between parts of this show and what was it called? It was Howl's Moving Castle. So the Studio Ghibli movie that actually, it's like Christian Bale and like Billy Crystal are some of the voices in it. In the character of Howl, who's the main magician, I believe. I've only seen a few bits and pieces of that one, but definitely will probably have to watch it because I've heard good things. Is kind of this very stoic, almost emotionless kind of wizard or magician, and then you have his like kind of sidekick, Calcifer. He's fire. He's basically fire, a little fire demon, voiced by Billy Crystal, and their dynamic, she said, was very, very similar to how it seems like Morpheus's will be with Matthew or the Raven. And speaking of the Raven, it was just really neat to kind of hear in a pretty cool way of just explaining, well, I don't want you to be here. And that's what Morpheus told Matthew. Matthew's like, I don't really know what here is or what I am. Like a couple of days ago or even hours ago, I can't remember what they said, I was a living person and then I died and then I woke up here and was told what to do. So I'm interested is being a Raven. And you also kind of found out in the episode that, and it's Patton Oswalt does the voice, and you can definitely tell it's him. It's clearly Patton Oswalt, but he's got a good voice for this. He even said in the show, like when he was talking about not trusting humans, like he was not a always trustworthy or good human. So I'm curious, is this some sort of a punishment? Maybe not quite going to hell, but not going to heaven. Or I don't know how these different dimensions or realms are completely set up in this show, but it's definitely pretty interesting. And that could be like a punishment, or is it purgatory, where you have to, you're indentured servant for a while until you gain something or prove something. It's interesting, but I'm sure they'll explain more about it. But I thought he did a great job. I jumped ahead a little bit. I didn't even get to the very end where you already had there's been a side story going on the entirety of this, where you have the mother, the mistress that had stolen all the artifacts from, not technically Morpheus, but stolen them from the person that stole them from Morpheus. She had been kind of finally explaining the real truth of everything to her now fully aged and adult son, who may or may not be the villain of the show setting up. I'm not 100% sure exactly. But up until this point, it's been very clear that they just don't have a very good relationship. And at the beginning of this episode as well, he just completely said, everything you've always told me has been a lie, and we've always moved, and we've done all these different things, changed names, done all of this. And, you know, they never fully grasped what was going on, because I don't think she ever fully told him everything, unless it was more advantageous to her. But, you know, when it came out of what she just told him, everything that had happened and been completely truthful, it was kind of interesting, because he completely changed his tone. And before, just being completely distrust, and I mean obviously distrust because he's been lied to a lot, but distrustful and not really liking his mom very much. All of a sudden he was just like, I get it, like I know why you had to do this stuff. And he was hinting at, you know, there's possibly other ways of doing it other than giving it back. She just wants to give back the ruby and anything remaining to Morpheus. And he was like, maybe. So again, they're kind of setting the seeds for some deceit there. Although they're making him a very sympathetic villain at the same time, because at the end, when the only way that she can convince her son to fully trust her after a lifetime of lies is she gives him the medallion or the amulet that she has that is like the ultimate protection from pretty much everything. I mean, that's what sent Corinthian, Boyd Holbrook's character, back to the dream realm. So she gives that to him to prove it, so that in effort to say that he doesn't need the ruby, so he could give the ruby back to Morpheus, and maybe he'll leave him alone. And actually he can now because he's got the protection. But we'll see how that goes. But it was really interesting because as soon as she did that, then she started to age, which is something else. I was like, wait a minute, does that mean she's going to age now? Because that was like 100 years ago and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out, sure as shit, she did age and just kind of whittled away and then just died there. And then, of course, the security guard comes in, thinks that he did it. And he's like, no, but you also probably shouldn't try and hurt me, because he's holding the amulet thing. And then somebody tries to, and he's very apologetic. I'm sorry, you don't do this. It's just going to hurt you. And then they just don't listen. Why would they? And then whatever this little thing does, as it like eviscerates people, it just basically just pulls them apart from the inside and then just sprays it all over the wall. And it's horribly violent and gross and kind of cool at the same time. Terrifying, though. Terrifying. Happens a couple other times, and then he's just walking out into freedom because he'd been detained that whole time. And then you get Corinthian, whatever his name is, Boyd Holbrook's character, walks up and is very helpful to him. So I'm guessing there's going to be some more dynamic between those two. So I will be interested to see where this goes. I have been pretty happy. It's been getting consistently better and better. Again, not that I was starting at a very low spot, but as far as the action, and it keeps taking turns on what I expect. Like, I definitely, in a somewhat good way, but also just like different ways, because I think the bigger things that I take away from here are, like in this episode, they actually got got his tool back, the bag of sand, relatively easy. I mean, it was a matter of just actually finding the person, convincing a little bit, and then, you know, working through the person's dream that had it in their possession. But other than that, I mean, it was no biggie mo to get it back. Introduce some characters. I'm still not sure on what Morpheus's actual powers are. Not necessarily in the dream world. I get that he's basically everything in the dream world, but in our realm, or in the waking world, what are his powers? I mean, he's apparently, you know, he's a big bad dude, but doing what? I don't know if they're gonna. I mean, they haven't shown anything to my knowledge yet, because he's looking to get his power back. So maybe they're going to, you know, build to that and show how big bad he is. But I'm interested because, I mean, I can understand why it's hard to get some humans to convince them to do what you want when you can't, or you don't back it up in any manner by doing anything random, big, or like exploding people or something like that. So I'm sure some of that's coming, but let me know what his actual powers are if you know. But other than that, it looks like from here we're going to hell, and we're going to see some more demons, which I was all about, because I thought the demon again actually looked pretty cool, and I'm interested to see where that goes. So let me know what you guys thought. I definitely dug this episode, and I will definitely be watching more as we go. So yep, like, share, and subscribe. Peace out.